Welcome back. So this is our final vignette having to do with the question of what could be rate limiting in bacterial cell division. And if you'll think back to when we laid out the various hypotheses, we had all sorts of different ideas. We had ideas about membrane transport, we had ideas about energy, we had ideas about the cell wall and lipids, we had ideas about the central dogma. And without going into the details of each and every one of them, what I'm ready to say is that until now, all of them have admitted of parallelization. What I mean by that is that if the cell was not able to achieve its objectives of rapid growth with n molecules, then it would increase n, and there was no intrinsic problem in the act of increasing that n. What we're going to find now is that with the ribosome, things are different. And the way that I want to think this through is I want to remind you that a ribosome, here I schematize it. It has a large and a small subunit, and it has a mass of roughly, let's say, 2.3 megadaltons. This is for the bacterial case. So we also know that 2/3 of mass ribosome is equal to nucleic acid. So in other words, as we said in the vignette about transcription, there's a 2,900 base long RNA, and then 1/3 of, there's two others, and then 1/3 of the mass of the ribosome is proteins. And the analysis is actually relatively simple. And the reason I say that is that this mass, which is proteins, is 1/3 of 2.3 megadaltons. And I'm going to say that that's approximately 800,000 daltons. So there's 800,000 daltons worth of protein in a ribosome. And we recall that the mass of an amino acid, so I'm going to call this the average amino acid, is approximately 100 daltons. So given this fact, this implies the number of peptide bonds is approximately equal to 800,000 daltons of protein divided by 100 daltons per amino acid, which yields, what does it yield? It yields 8,000 peptide bonds. So what I'm saying is that in order for a ribosome to make another ribosome, it needs to perform 8,000 peptide bonds. And we can work out how long that takes. So how long does it take to perform this 8,000 polypeptide bonds? And the answer to that is gotten by remembering that the velocity of the ribosome, is somewhere between 10 and 20 amino acids per second. So we can figure out then how many seconds it's going to take. So time to translate ribosomal protein is approximately equal to 8,000 amino acids divided by, let's say, 15 amino acids per second, just to split the difference. And so if it were, so this is going to give us roughly 600 seconds, which is about 10 minutes. So that's super interesting, because what we're saying is that in order for a ribosome to make a new ribosome, it's going to occupy 10 minutes of time. And there's really no that we can think of. There's no scheme for parallelizing. In other words, I can't get 100 ribosomes to work on making one new ribosome, and then that will somehow lead to a speed up once there are more ribosomes around. So, it's an apparent paradox, or at least it's an apparent constraint, and it's not really clear if there's any smart ways to beat that constraint. So, I think whether we start with one ribosome or two ribosomes or n ribosomes, the bottom line is that each one of those ribosomes needs to be it needs to be synthesized. It needs to be copied, and the act of doing so is going to require 10 minutes worth of protein synthesis. Not sure what else I had here. This was just as a reminder that people have counted the number of ribosomes as a function of cell volume, but which is really related to growth rate. And you can see that there's between 40,000, 80,000 ribosomes for these kinds of intermediate to fast growth rates. So with this, what I would say is that, first of all, once again, the intent here was to show you the nature of sort of order of magnitude thinking and street fighting mathematics. And it was also to try to put together what amounts to a polarizing prediction. In other words, we actually think that the rate limiting step is that a ribosome has to make a new ribosome, and there's no way around that I'm aware of. So it's something. Let me leave it as a challenge to those of you listening to this, to think about ways to actually find some sort of parallelization. So with that, what I'm going to do in the final vignette on this section of the course is simply 5-10 minutes of trying to recap the entirety of what we've said. And I hope that you've had as much fun thinking about this as I have.